I want you to picture two apartments in the same city. Same neighborhood, actually. Same block. The first one belongs to Marcus. Marcus is 26 years old. He works in marketing at a mid-sized tech company, makes around $62,000 a year. And his apartment looks exactly the way you would expect a successful 26-year-old's apartment to look. There is a 75-inch TV mounted on the wall above a sectional sofa that cost him $2,400. There is a Peloton in the corner. He uses it maybe once a week. There are sneakers he paid $300 for in a box on the shelf, still in their original packaging. His kitchen has one of those espresso machines that costs more than most people's car payments. On weekends, Marcus goes out with his friends, and he never checks the bill before he pays it. His Venmo transactions read like a travel itinerary. His Instagram looks incredible. He is, by every visible measure, crushing it. The second apartment belongs to Jamie. Jamie also makes around $60,000 a year. Jamie's apartment is smaller. The couch is from a Facebook Marketplace find. Solid wood frame, a little worn at the armrests. The TV is 43 inches. The shoes are fine. The coffee is made in a French press that cost $11. Jamie does not go out as much. When Jamie does go out, she usually suggests splitting appetizers. Her social media presence is, let's say, quieter. Here is what you cannot see from the outside. Marcus, at 26, has $412 in savings. He has a credit card balance of $9,300 at 22% interest. He has contributed exactly nothing to a retirement account. Not because he does not know retirement accounts exist, because he always thinks he will start next month. Jamie, at 26, has $14,000 in an index fund she started at 22. She has no consumer debt. And she contributes 15% of every paycheck to a 401k that her employer partially matches. This isn't a story about lifestyle choices. It's a story about the single decade where the math of money either starts working for you or starts working against you. And by the time most people realize which side they're on, it is almost impossible to switch. Your 20s are not just an important decade for wealth. They are, in a very precise mathematical sense, the only decade that truly matters. And I am going to show you exactly why and exactly what to do about it. Let me start with a concept that will reframe how you think about time and money for the rest of your life. It is called the compounding asymmetry. And once you understand it, you will never look at a dollar the same way again. Here is the idea in one sentence. A dollar saved at 22 is worth roughly 7 times more than a dollar saved at 42. Not metaphorically, mathematically. Literally 7 times more, assuming a 7% average annual return over the course of a standard working life. If you invest $1,000 at age 22 and never touch it, and a 7% average annual return, by the time you are 65, that $1,000 becomes roughly $21,000. That same $1,000 invested at 32 becomes about $10,000. At 42, about $5,000. At 52, about $2,500. Same money, completely different outcomes. The only variable is when. This is the first dimension of the asymmetry, the time dimension. Every year you wait to start investing does not just delay your returns by 1 year. It cuts the eventual value of every dollar you save roughly in half over the long run. People understand this intellectually, but they do not feel it. And finance is mostly a feelings problem, not a knowledge problem. The second dimension is the momentum dimension. Wealth, once started, creates conditions for more wealth. Someone who invests consistently through their 20s does not just end up with more money. They develop habits, knowledge, and risk tolerance that the late starter has to rebuild from scratch. The late starter might have more income, but they also have a mortgage, kids, aging parents, and a lifestyle that has inflated to match that income. The third dimension is what researchers sometimes call the identity dimension. The person who invests through their 20s eventually stops thinking of themselves as someone who is trying to build wealth. They just are someone with wealth. That shift in self-concept changes every financial decision they make, almost automatically. The fourth dimension is the optionality dimension. Money, early on, buys you choices. The person with a solid financial foundation at 30 can take career risks, move cities, say no to bad bosses, start something. The person with no financial foundation at 30 cannot. They are structurally trapped. And here is the cruel irony. The 20s are the decade when most people have the fewest obligations, the lowest expenses, and the most flexibility. It is the cheapest decade to save, and most people treat it as the cheapest decade to spend. So this video is not about depriving yourself in your 20s. It is about understanding, really understanding, why the decisions you make between 22 and 32 will shape every single decade that comes after. Rule 1. Stop trading your future self for your current self's entertainment. Most people think that their financial situation in their 20s does not really matter because their income will go up. And income does tend to go up. But here is what they miss. Spending tends to go up faster. Studies consistently show that as income increases, discretionary spending increases at a rate that typically exceeds income growth for people who have not deliberately set systems to prevent this. In practical terms, this means that if you do not save aggressively while your expenses are low, you will probably never save aggressively. Because your expenses will not stay low. They will match your income or exceed it, and you will always feel like you will start saving properly when you make a bit more. This is not a willpower failure. It is a system failure. Your brain is genuinely not wired to prioritize a future self that feels abstract over a current self that feels very real and very present. Behavioral economists have documented this extensively. The future you is, to your current brain, functionally a stranger. So you have to create a system that removes the decision. The most powerful version of this is paying yourself first. The day you get paid, before you see that money in your checking account, a fixed percentage goes into an investment account. Not what is left over after spending, the first dollars, automatically. The reason this works where willpower fails is that you cannot spend money you never saw. Researchers have found that the vast majority of people adjust their spending within 2 to 3 months without meaningfully reducing their reported life satisfaction. You will not miss it as much as you think. The number most financial educators suggest starting with is 10 to 15% of gross income. For someone making $50,000 a year, that is $400 to $600 per month. Over 10 years, invested consistently in a low-cost index fund tracking the broad market, historically that has turned into somewhere between $70,000 and $100,000. Your current entertainment is worth exactly what you pay for it, and then it is gone. Your future investment compounds forever. Rule 2. Your emergency fund is not an emergency. It is a leverage machine. Most people think an emergency fund is a boring bucket of cash you keep around in case something goes wrong. Without an emergency fund, every financial decision you make is made under duress. Car breaks down? Credit card. Medical bill? Payment plan with interest. And debt, specifically high-interest consumer debt, is the single most reliable way to undo the compounding math I just showed you. A credit card at 22% interest does not just cost you 22% per year. It costs you the compounding returns you would have earned on that money for every year it sits on that card. $5,000 in credit card debt at 22% interest, if you pay the minimum each month, takes roughly 30 years to pay off and costs you more than $11,000 in interest alone. The standard guidance is 3 to 6 months of essential expenses in a high-yield savings account. For someone spending $2,000 a month on necessities, rent, food, utilities, transportation, that means $6,000 to $12,000. Start with $1,000 as your first target. $1,000 covers most single-incident emergencies. It gets you out of the immediate danger zone, where every unexpected expense becomes a debt spiral. But do not start investing aggressively until you have that initial buffer, because investing while simultaneously carrying high-interest debt is mathematically irrational. The average market return over the long term is roughly 7 to 10%. Credit card interest is 18 to 29%. The math is not complicated. The emergency fund is what lets you make clear-headed financial decisions the rest of the time. Without it, you are always one bad month from starting over. Financial security is not just a money thing. It is a cognitive resource thing. Worry consumes mental bandwidth. Rule 3. Your income is not your wealth, and this distinction will define you. Most people treat their income as their wealth. I make $60,000, therefore I am a $60,000 a year person. Income is a flow. Wealth is a stock. Income is the river. Wealth is the lake. You can have an enormous river and a completely empty lake if there are no barriers to keep the water in. This is Marcus's situation. Real wealth is the gap between what you earn and what you spend, multiplied by time. That is it. That is the entire formula. Your income in your 20s is probably lower than it will ever be again, but your expenses can also be at their historical low. The person making $45,000 a year with $15,000 in annual expenses has a $30,000 annual savings capacity. The person making $90,000 a year with $80,000 in annual expenses has a $10,000 annual savings capacity. The higher earner feels richer and is building wealth slower. Studies of actual millionaire households consistently find that the most common trait shared by first-generation wealth builders is not high income. It is high savings rate relative to income, sustained over time. Stop chasing the income number and start chasing the savings rate number. Even a 5% increase in savings rate, just 5 cents out of every dollar, invested consistently over a 30-year career at average market returns, translates to hundreds of thousands of dollars. Rule 4. Understand what you are actually buying when you spend money. Most people think they are buying things: cars, clothes, meals, subscriptions, experiences. They are actually buying something else. They are buying future hours of work. Here is the reframe. Every dollar you spend represents some number of hours of your life that you will have to work to earn. A $200 purchase for someone earning $15 an hour after tax is 13 hours of work. For someone earning $30 an hour after tax, it is about 7 hours. This calculation does not make you not buy things. It just makes the trade explicit. The version of this that applies specifically to your 20s is about recurring expenses. A $45 monthly subscription you never use is $540 a year. Over 10 years, invested at average returns, that is around $8,000. Most people have 3 to 5 subscriptions they have forgotten about. The category that stings the most when you run these numbers is the car. The average new car payment in the United States is now above $700 per month. Add insurance, maintenance, fuel, and depreciation, and researchers have estimated that the average American spends between 8 and 12% of their gross income on their vehicle. For a $50,000 earner, that is $4,000 to $6,000 a year. Over a working life, starting in your 20s, the opportunity cost can exceed $500,000 in present value terms. That does not mean never own a car. It means know what you are actually paying. The sticker price is not the price. Rule 5. The best investment you will ever make is not in the stock market. The best investment is in your own earning capacity. The human capital argument says this: at 22, your most valuable asset is not your savings account. It is the next 40 years of your earning potential. A 20% increase in your income achieved through skill development, strategic job changes, or career positioning is worth more than almost any portfolio strategy. The practical implication is, do not be cheap with investments in yourself. The online course that might get you a certification, the career coach, the conference where you meet the person who introduces you to a better opportunity. There is a crucial caveat. Not all self-investment is equal. A $1,000 online course that certifiably adds a skill with market demand is very different from a $3,000 personal development retreat that mostly makes you feel good for a weekend. The filter is simple. Ask whether this investment has a plausible, concrete mechanism by which it increases your income or your options in the next 2 to 3 years. Rule 6. Debt is not the problem. The kind of debt is the problem. There are 2 categories of debt that matter for your 20s. The first is productive debt, debt that funds an asset or experience that increases your future earning capacity. Student loans for a degree in a field with real employment demand can be productive debt. A mortgage in a market where you plan to stay for more than 5 years, bought at a payment that does not strain your savings rate, can be productive debt. The second category is consumptive debt, debt that funds things that have already been consumed or that depreciate in value. Credit card debt for restaurant meals, vacations, clothes, or electronics is the most common form. Car loans for vehicles more expensive than your actual transportation needs. This is the category that destroys wealth, not because spending on enjoyment is wrong, but because paying interest on past enjoyment means your future self is working to fund your past self's fun. The rule of thumb that financial planners most commonly use is this: if the interest rate on a debt is higher than what you could reasonably expect to earn investing that money, pay the debt first. Any debt above 10%, and most consumer debt is well above that, should be eliminated before aggressive investing begins. Pay down high-interest debt, build your emergency fund, then invest. In that order. Every time. Rule 7. Your social environment is a financial force, and most people pretend it is not. Research in behavioral economics consistently finds that your spending patterns are heavily influenced by the spending patterns of the people you spend the most time with. If your friend group eats out 3 times a week at restaurants where the average check is $60 per person, you will feel strange eating out once a week at a place where the check is $20. The social norm becomes the budget norm. And in your 20s, when your friend group is often in a similar income bracket and similarly has no dependents and similarly has a lifestyle built around visible spending, this pressure is enormous. Studies have found that people consistently overestimate how much their social peers spend on consumption and underestimate how much their peers save. We see the spending. We do not see the savings. So we calibrate upward on spending and downward on saving, because we are comparing our invisible financial reality to other people's visible social performance. The practical implication is not to get new friends. It is to be deliberate about the social norms you adopt as your own. Have the conversation. You will be surprised how many of them are quietly trying to do the same thing and are just as trapped in the performance as you are. Rule 8. The tax code rewards early savers with extraordinary generosity, and almost no one uses it fully. A traditional 401k contribution reduces your taxable income in the year you contribute. A Roth IRA contribution, made with after-tax dollars, grows entirely tax-free forever. The math on the Roth IRA specifically is compelling for young earners. At 22, if your tax rate is relatively low because your income is relatively low, paying taxes now on your Roth IRA contributions and never paying taxes on those earnings again is a significant advantage. Someone who contributes the annual maximum to a Roth IRA, starting at 22 and continuing for 10 years, then stops completely, will often end up with more tax-free retirement wealth than someone who starts at 32 and contributes every year until retirement. If your employer offers any form of retirement match, not capturing that full match is one of the most expensive financial mistakes you can make. It is a 100% immediate return on your contribution. There is no investment on earth that reliably returns 100% immediately. That match is the single best financial deal most employees have access to. Rule 9. The biggest wealth killer in your 20s is not debt or spending, it is waiting. Present bias is the tendency to value immediate rewards over future rewards out of proportion to what is rational. Your brain genuinely experiences a delayed reward as less real than an immediate one. The readiness illusion is the feeling that you will be ready to start being financially responsible when some external condition is met. When you pay off your credit card, when you get that promotion, when you move. When is always in the future. It is never right now. And the cruelty of compound interest is that right now is always the most valuable moment to start. Studies looking at the lifetime wealth difference between someone who starts at 22 and someone who starts at 32 with the same contribution rate show differences of hundreds of thousands of dollars at retirement. Just from those 10 years, nothing else different. Same income, same contribution rate, same investment choices. 10 years of starting later costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. The cure for the readiness illusion is imperfect action. You do not need a perfect financial plan. You do not need to fully understand investing. You need to open an account and put money in it, even if the amount is small, even if your situation is messy, even if you feel unready. The system does not care whether you felt ready. The compounding starts the moment you act. Rule 10. Build one financial decision that your future self will thank you for every single year. The most powerful version of this is developing a consistent investment habit in a diversified, low-cost vehicle. Index funds that track the broad market have, over every 30-plus year period in recorded market history, returned positive results. They are not exciting. They do not make for interesting dinner conversation. They just work consistently for people who start early and do not panic and sell when markets drop. But beyond investing, there are structural decisions in your 20s that have enormous long-term financial leverage. The city you choose to live in affects your savings capacity. The career trajectory you build in your 20s shapes your income ceiling for decades. The habits you form now calcify into defaults that become nearly effortless. None of this requires perfection. The bar is not optimization. The bar is direction. Are you moving in the direction of financial security? Is each year a little better than the last? That is enough. The math will do the rest. This video is for educational purposes, not financial advice. Please speak with a qualified professional before making decisions about your specific financial situation. This week, do one thing. Just one. Open a high-yield savings account if you do not have one. Or check the interest rate on your current savings account and compare it to what high-yield options offer. This takes 20 to 30 minutes. You are looking for accounts that offer rates significantly above the national average for standard savings accounts. The difference compounds. A $10,000 emergency fund at 0.5% earns $50 a year. At 4 or 5%, it earns $400 to $500 a year. This month, audit your fixed expenses. Go through every recurring charge in the last 90 days. Subscriptions, memberships, automatic renewals, everything. Cancel anything you have not used in the last 60 days. Then list your 3 largest variable expense categories, probably food, entertainment, and some form of shopping. Pick one and set a specific dollar target that is 10% lower than what you spent last month. Not a vague intention, a specific number. Then automate the difference. This quarter, tackle the debt and account structure questions. If you have consumer debt at high interest rates, make a concrete payoff plan. The most mathematically efficient approach is to pay the minimum on everything and throw every available extra dollar at the highest interest rate debt first. Once it is gone, redirect those payments to the next highest rate. There is also a psychological variant called the snowball method, where you pay off the smallest balance first, regardless of interest rate, because the sense of progress helps some people stay motivated. Both work. The one you will actually stick to is the right one. Also this quarter, if your employer offers a retirement match and you are not capturing all of it, increase your contribution to capture the full match. If you have no retirement account at all, open one. The process of opening a Roth IRA at a reputable brokerage takes about 15 minutes online. Put in whatever you can, even if it is a small amount. By the end of this quarter, you should have an emergency fund started, at least one automated savings or investment contribution running, a clear picture of your debt situation, and a plan for addressing it. That is not perfection. That is a foundation, and foundations compound too. Remember Marcus and Jamie? Here is what actually happened. At 26, when we met them at the start of this video, Marcus and Jamie were both in the situations I described. At 32, Marcus had a wake-up moment, a job loss, 3 months of scrambling, credit card debt that had grown to $14,000, and the realization that he had spent 6 years building a performance of wealth without any of the actual thing. He started over. He cut his lifestyle, paid off the debt, and started investing. He was disciplined and serious. He did everything right, just starting at 32 instead of 22. At 45, Jamie has a net worth that industry analysts would characterize as solidly on track for a comfortable retirement before 60. Marcus, starting 10 years later with the same income and the same discipline, is meaningfully behind. This is the cycle that matters. The person who starts early builds security, and security builds confidence, and confidence builds better decisions, and better decisions build more wealth. The compounding is not just financial, it is cognitive and emotional. The wealthy person makes different decisions, not only because they have more money, but because they do not have the anxiety and constraint that come with financial insecurity. The gap between these two cycles is not talent. It is not even income. It is a handful of decisions made early that compound over time. Your 20s are the only decade that truly matters for wealth. Not because the other decades are irrelevant, but because the other decades are determined by what you do in this one. The choices you make between 22 and 32 are the ones that your 65-year-old self will feel most deeply. They will feel them as freedom, or they will feel them as constraint. The choice is simply whether you want to be someone who used the most powerful compounding window in your life intentionally, or someone who spent it beautifully and arrived at 32 starting over. Time is the only asset that cannot be recovered. Every other financial mistake is correctable. You can earn more, you can spend less, you can get out of debt. You cannot get back the years. The compound interest on $1 invested at 22 is not available to you at 32. That specific window, that exact opportunity, closes quietly, year by year, whether or not you noticed it was open. The best time to start was the day you got your first real paycheck. The second best time is right now.